Hey everybody, Kewalski here, checking in with another one of our hashtag Star Trek discussions videos. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Anas Abdin lawsuit. We did just receive the official ruling from the judge the other day in regards to the lawsuit, so I want to share my thoughts as to what's going on and give you some of the facts. So for those of you who may not be aware, Anas Abdin is an indie game developer, a pixel art game developer that has worked on a video game called Tardigrades for the better part of several good years. And in that video game, there is a giant blue tardigrade that envelops the main character, and he uses that to then travel through space and time and do all sorts of different things inside of the video game. Now, initially, the similarities between the tardigrades inside of the Tardigrades video game and Star Trek Discovery were kind of alarming. There was also some spore drive activity, looked like little spores flying around, not the drive, but the spores flying around. And then some of the main characters kind of looked similar to the characters that he had designed for his game several years prior to the release of Star Trek Discovery. So he launched a copyright lawsuit against CBS a few years ago, back when the first season of Discovery kind of came out. And it's been kind of ongoing and ongoing and ongoing, and eventually it got to the point where the judge said, listen, you have to prove, beyond reasonable doubt, I don't know, but you have to prove that the people at CBS knew about your game and then took elements out of it and put it into their television show. And ultimately, that basically proves to be really kind of an impossible task because the game was published publicly on his blog and on Steam, so there's no way really to track whether or not somebody knew about it. We can't know that for sure. Regardless of it, basically is based off of current law that the U.S. maintains that this case was in fact dismissed per the judge's orders here based off of the defendant's request to dismiss the case, in this case the defendants being CBS and Netflix. So there are a couple of key takeaways here. A lot of people are saying, well, he should appeal this. He should go after them continuously. He shouldn't just let it go. You know, there's something going on here, yada, yada. There's a couple of key things here, which I don't think that a lot of people have read the court documents, so I wanted to share with all of you where I don't think that Anas should continue the case unless he gets some breaking, evidence that could show some kind of connection between the show and the video game. So let me read a couple of things here that the judge and her aides put into the document as to why they gave this ruling to dismiss. This first one here says, the tardigrade in both the video compilation and the television series assists humans with spaceflight, but in completely different ways. The video compilation's 13-second clip of tardigrade shows the tardigrade enveloping the character Carter and something like a bear hug before floating off into space. In the television series, Stamets gains the tardigrade's power to travel through the mycelial network by injecting himself with the tardigrade's DNA. The injection gives Stamets supernatural powers, but also causes him serious physical harm. These clips are small pieces of each work and do not alone represent each work's concept and plot. Now, this is what is kind of a key takeaway here and kind of connects back to the other points that I'm going to bring up, which is that the overarching story of the Tardigrades video game, which is really unknown at this point, and the overarching story of Star Trek Discovery Season 1, Season 2, they don't appear to be connected really in any way. And that is one of the main ingredients to the argument of dismissing this case that I found. They do argue a little bit about the differences between protectable and non-protectable things and the fact that the characters are kind of more generic and they're not really protectable at all. But this, to me, is one of the main reasons that I don't think Anas should press forward, is that because of the fact that the Tardigrades video game doesn't have its full plot and storyline mapped out, as far as I know, it is impossible really to show that they stole every element of his video game and put it into Discovery. Bottom line being that there wasn't enough from the game inside of the show for it to be warranted as an actual IP lawsuit kind of case. Now that kind of goes into this next piece here, where it says Stamets also is sometimes immersed in glowing blue lights, and Burnham once walks through an astral plane similar to that in the Tardigrades video game. In both works, the characters' uniforms delineate status and rank, and their spacesuits have large headpieces. These similarities do not change the overall calculus. They do not provide a sufficient basis to find substantial similarity between the work's total concept and feel. And again, that's the key thing here, which is the total concept and feel. They didn't look at it specifically as tardigrades. They kind of threw the tardigrades argument basically out because they felt as though, the court felt as though that the tardigrades was just non-protectable, period. And that there were other videos that they did reference inside the court document of people who had used tardigrades in other animated shorts dating back early as 2007. So they were like, there's no way you can use that as an argument. So then they shifted it to the overall feel between the show and the game. And ultimately, it didn't really pan out well for Anas because they're beyond the character similarities in the tardigrade situation. There aren't a whole lot of other similarities between the two distinct different properties. And I say that because of this section here where it says the alleged similarities between other characters in the two works also fail to support a claim as they're mostly generalized, non-protectable descriptions, which again, it kind of goes through all the different things where it's like Burnham and Yolanda from the game and the show are both black women and they have short haircuts. That's not a protectable thing. Yeah, they may look kind of the same and it may seem a little fishy, but that's it. They're not non-protectable. And it goes through all the rest of the characters. And unfortunately for Anas, these things, he was kind of outclassed in a lot of ways. These things were kind of pointed out by the court of saying, listen, you don't really have much of an argument here because you can't prove that the overall game and the overall show are connected in a lot of substantial ways. And again, the tardigrade being the crux of that argument kind of got tossed out overall. So he was really left with a few little sticks left to fight with, and they weren't really sufficient enough to hold up. And that's why ultimately I think the case was dismissed. Anyway, so that kind of wraps up a bit of the report that we got from the judge. I have spoken with Anas. He hasn't really divulged to me if he's going to be pursuing the case. I personally would not really recommend it again because unless he has another large bit of evidence, it doesn't seem like he has much more legs to stand on. So with all the facts out of the way, I want to get to what my opinion on this is. And for those of you who have been, I guess, longtime fans of the channel, you kind of know that I have supported Anas in this lawsuit. And I have many reasons for doing that, some of which I'm not really going to share with all of you, but I have my reasons for doing that. And I've talked to different people about it, people who I agree with on a lot of things, but they disagree with my support of Anas in this situation. And I think that they recognize that I have a reason for it, even though if it doesn't make any sense. I understand, totally. You don't need to type it all up in a long comment about how dumb I am regarding IP laws, and this case was never going to make it, and it was just a way to do this and that, and yada yada. I already know all that. I supported Anas for my own personal reasons. And bottom line is, there's two things I want to say. Bottom line of, number one is that he was an indie game developer who felt like he was slighted. And he, instead of just sitting around and just moping about it, he hired a team of lawyers and they went to investigate and there was a judgment passed. To me, that's a good day. It wasn't the outcome that he wanted, and I get that, and I feel for the man because I think that he was hoping for something else. It wasn't the outcome he wanted, but to me it's a good day because instead of sitting around for the rest of his life wondering, what if? Should I have said something? Should I have done something? Should I have just asked the question? He decided to stand up and say, you know what, I'm going to ask the question, and I want to find out if there's something fishy going on here. And ultimately, the judge ruled and that there wasn't, and, you know, that is what it is. So that's one bottom line thing. The other bottom line thing I want to say is, people on both sides of the fence, both the hating of Star Trek right now, New Trek, and the loving of New Trek, have utilized this case and Anas as a weapon to fight each other. I think that whatever his initial intent was when he first started out, his lawsuit has been commandeered by both groups for different reasons to push their own individualized agendas. The haters obviously used it to try to say how terrible Star Trek Discovery is and how terrible Alex Kurtzman is and how much he stole from everybody and he's just a thief, even though it would have been Brian Fuller that stole from him, but whatever. They used his lawsuit as a weapon to disparage and destroy Star Trek Discovery and the reputation of Star Trek. The loving of Star Trek, the loving new Star Trek group, used it to delegitimize a lot of the criticisms that Star Trek get. They always say something like, "Oh yeah, I bet you also believe that dumb lawsuit," and they use that as a kind of as a weapon as well, where both sides are fighting each other with this lawsuit. And I think whatever his original intent was is completely lost. He's an indie developer. I was one of the first people to talk to him, not fucking Nerdrotic, not Doomcock, not Mecha, not Midnight's Edge, not any of those people. I was one of the first people that talked to him about this story, and I believed him, and I still think it's very suspicious, and it's just whatever. It's not provable in the court of law. That's fine, but these people took his message and warped it into something else, and they are now pressuring him to continue this lawsuit, and I bet not many of those people are willing to foot the bill for the huge, huge cost that it would be incurred on his part for those lawyers to try to continue this case. And yes, some of them may have done pro bono, some of them may have done with the contingency that they would only get paid if the lawsuit got paid out. But now that that first one is done, in order to continue that, you think lawyers are going to continue to waste their own time on a case that already got dismissed? No, they're not. not unless another huge bit of information gets dropped. They're not going to do that. So you'd have to really go dig deep into coffers that most of us don't have, and that those people who are pushing him right now into doing these further lawsuits are not going to be dropping thousands of dollars to help cover those legal costs. They're not going to do it. So we all just need to just let this man understand. I try not to push people in different directions, but I just ask that we recognize that he was an indie game developer. He thought he was slighted. He did his job, his due diligence, by hiring lawyers and asking the question. They came back and said, nope, there's nothing fishy here, nothing that you can prove. And now he just knows in his soul that he at least asked the question, where many of us would have just simply cowered away and not had to try to take CBS to court, which is a huge undertaking. That takes some serious nerve to take them to court. It's not just something you just decide on a whim, you know? So we just need to remember that I think this was a good day. We didn't get the outcome that he was looking for, but I think it was a good day of the legal system at least working effectively to provide him with an answer. Again, I was one of the first people that talked to him about this. He doesn't hate Star Trek Discovery. He doesn't hate this current Star Trek. He did actively try to avoid a lawsuit situation when this first broke. And if you guys go back to my original videos on this topic, I covered that as well, where he tried very actively to speak to somebody internally to CBS, and they just blocked him on every which way possible. So I just want people to kind of remember that there's a large story here, and there's a bit of narrative being sent out from all different angles, and to just keep your minds open and formulate your own opinions. All right, I'm getting off my soapbox now. I'm curious to hear what all of you guys and gals think about this lawsuit, and what do you think this outcome really means for the future of Star Trek Discovery? Do you think that this is going to help reduce some of the hatred for it, or do you think it's going to increase it more? I'm curious to hear what all of you guys and gals think about that. Throw up those comments down below. Let's go ahead and get those conversations started. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies!